In the heart of Manhattan, where skyscrapers sliced through the gray morning clouds and men in tailored suits moved with urgency, a very different figure approached a gleaming glass tower. Her name was Lily Brooks. She wore a faded brown coat that hung loosely on her thin frame and sneakers that had clearly seen better days. In her hand, she clutched a worn leather folder like it contained the most precious thing in the world. Inside the building, on the 50th floor, the weekly CEO Summit was already underway. A private gathering of some of the most powerful corporate leaders in America. Men and women who made decisions that could shift markets and move the needle of entire industries. The air was thick with the scent of expensive cologne and stronger egos. Around a long mahogany table, they sipped custom-blended espressos and debated billion-dollar mergers like they were ordering lunch. Security was tight. The receptionist downstairs had almost turned Lily away when she saw her clothes. But after checking a hand-scrawled guest pass and confirming a name on the confidential list, she had reluctantly waved her through. Still, Lily could feel the weight of every stare as she stepped out of the elevator and into that rarefied world. Heads turned. Murmurs passed from one side of the room to the other like a ripple on a still pond. Who is she? Is she lost? Is she looking for maintenance? The facilitator of the meeting, a woman with sharp eyes and sharper heels, glanced at Lily over the rim of her tablet. For a second, confusion flickered across her face. Then she smiled a tight corporate smile and spoke into the microphone clipped to her jacket. "Excuse me, miss, I believe you might be in the wrong place. The supply office is down the hall." Lily hesitated. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her voice steady. "No, ma'am. I am here for the innovation proposal session. I have a presentation scheduled." The room went oddly quiet. A few CEOs exchanged smirks. One, a man in a navy pinstripe suit with a Rolex that could pay off most mortgages, leaned toward his neighbor and whispered loud enough to be heard. "This should be good." The facilitator blinked, checked her tablet again, and frowned. Then she shrugged and gestured to a lonely chair at the end of the table, the kind of seat usually reserved for interns or junior analysts. "You may proceed," she said without warmth. "You have 5 minutes." Lily nodded. She crossed the polished marble floor with small, careful steps, her sneakers squeaking faintly against the surface. She placed her folder on the table. No elaborate PowerPoint. No branded portfolio. Just a single sheet of hand-drawn diagrams and a few scribbled notes in neat cursive writing. At this point, some of the executives barely concealed their amusement. One CEO adjusted his cufflinks and checked his watch. Another tapped away on his phone, sending what was probably a sarcastic text. After all, what could a simple woman in a thrift store coat possibly offer to a room full of titans? And yet, if you have ever felt invisible before, if you have ever stood in a room where you knew you were underestimated, where you were judged before you even spoke, then you might recognize the small spark that flickered in Lily's eyes at that moment. She was not here to impress them with flash. She was not here to charm them with buzzwords. She was here for something much simpler and much more dangerous. She was here with an idea. She unfolded the single sheet carefully. The page seemed almost too fragile for such an important moment. Then she looked up and began to speak. "Gentlemen and ladies," she said softly, her voice carrying surprisingly well in the large room, "while you spend millions chasing the next big acquisition, 80% of your operational losses come from internal inefficiencies you are not even tracking." Several executives frowned. The CFO of a major logistics firm stopped mid-sip of his espresso and lowered his cup. Lily continued unfazed. "What I am proposing today is not a new app. It is not a new social media platform. It is not a new marketing gimmick. It is a way to plug the holes that are sinking your ships from the inside out." She pointed to the hand-drawn diagram. A simple flowchart. No colors. No logos. But the clarity was undeniable. This is a real-time cost tracking system that integrates into your existing operations without expensive overhauls. It identifies inefficiencies at the source before they metastasize into million-dollar problems. There was a rustle of movement around the table. Suddenly, some of the CEOs were sitting straighter. Some of them leaned forward to see the page better. The man with the Rolex frowned deeply and pulled his laptop closer. "In just the first 3 months of implementing this model at a mid-sized firm in Brooklyn," Lily said, "we cut operational waste by 32% and increased net profit margins by 8%. She let the numbers hang in the air for a moment. "And we did it without adding a single new hire. Silence fell like a heavy curtain. No one laughed now. No one texted. No one whispered. The facilitator coughed lightly and glanced at the timer on the wall. "Miss Brooks, your 5 minutes are up." A few executives protested at once. "Let her finish." "Wait a second, I want to hear the rest." The facilitator faltered. Lily looked around the table. Calm. Centered. She had spent so many years feeling small in rooms like this. Too quiet. Too plain. Too easily dismissed. But today she had decided something quietly in her soul. Today she was not asking for their approval. She was offering them a choice. Accept what she brought or ignore it at their own peril. And if you think that a simple woman cannot change the trajectory of powerful men and women, then you have never seen what determination wrapped in humility can accomplish. As Lily turned back to her folder ready to answer their questions, the atmosphere in the room had shifted. Something extraordinary was about to happen. And it all started because one simple woman dared to walk into a place she was never meant to belong. The atmosphere in the room was no longer casual. Gone were the smirks and the casual glances at watches. Now there was a different tension in the air. A cautious curiosity. An unspoken question moving among the executives. Who was this woman? How had she seen what they had missed? Lily Brooks remained composed at the far end of the table. Her fingers lightly brushed the edge of her folder as if grounding herself. She had learned a long time ago that confidence did not come from loud voices or expensive clothes. It came from knowing your value even when no one else did. The first question came from the CFO of a global shipping company. His voice was clipped and professional. "Can you walk us through how your model identifies operational waste in real time without disrupting workflow?" Lily nodded. Her explanation was simple, uncluttered. She spoke about integrating passive data collection points into existing processes, about using algorithms to flag anomalies that human managers often missed, about visual dashboards that even a non-technical manager could interpret. She did not use buzzwords. She did not hide behind jargon. She spoke like someone who had spent years living among real problems, not just theorizing about them from an ivory tower. The logistics CEO leaned forward, scribbling notes. The woman from the technology firm began tapping rapidly on her tablet. One executive even pulled out his phone and snapped a discreet photo of Lily's diagram. Still, there were skeptics. A sharp-faced man with silver hair and a power tie cleared his throat. "Your ideas sound promising, Miss Brooks. But integration at scale is not as simple as drawing a few arrows on a chart. What experience do you have with enterprise-level implementation?" It was the question Lily had expected. The kind of question designed to expose the gaps in her resume. She met his gaze without flinching. "I do not have an MBA, sir. I have not worked at a consulting firm. I am not backed by venture capital." She let the facts hang in the air for a moment before continuing. "What I have is 15 years of solving real financial problems for small businesses that could not afford to fail. I have spent nights recalculating payrolls by hand because a software glitch would have meant eviction for 5 families. I have sat across kitchen tables helping shop owners save their dreams one receipt at a time." She smiled faintly. "When failure is not an option, you learn to make things work at any scale." The room went silent again. This was not the kind of answer they were used to. It was not polished. It was not rehearsed. It was real, and somehow that made it even more compelling. The silver-haired executive shifted in his seat. He opened his mouth as if to argue, but then closed it again. Another hand went up. A woman this time. Young, maybe early 30s, dressed in a sharp black pantsuit. "What drove you to create this model, Miss Brooks? What was the spark?" Lily paused, her fingers still brushing the folder as if drawing strength from it. "A bakery in Queens," she said softly. "They were good people, made the best bread you ever tasted. But they were drowning under hidden costs they did not even know they had. Rent hikes, delivery delays, wastage they could not measure. I tried to help, but every tool I found was either too expensive or too complicated for them." Her voice grew firmer. "So I built one they could use." The young woman in the black suit nodded slowly, a glimmer of respect in her eyes. The questions kept coming. Technical questions, operational questions, strategic questions. And each time Lily answered with the quiet confidence of someone who had thought through every angle, not in theory, but in the fire of real necessity. As the discussion deepened, something unexpected began to happen. The CEOs began to talk less and listen more. At first it was subtle. The tapping of pens against notepads stopped. The constant checking of watches slowed. The body language shifted. Arms uncrossed. Postures leaned in. Somewhere in that 50th floor conference room, surrounded by the gleaming glass and polished marble, the balance of power tilted. Not through aggression. not through flashy presentations, but through the undeniable gravity of truth spoken plainly. And yet even as Lily held their attention, she knew better than to let her guard down. Experience had taught her that change did not come easily in rooms like this. It would take more than a clever model to truly reach them. It would take a story that made them feel what their spreadsheets could not. And so when one of the older executives, a gruff man with a reputation for ruthless acquisitions, leaned back and said, "All this sounds great in theory, Miss Brooks. But what does it really look like on the ground?" Lily did not hesitate. She told them about the bakery in Queens, about how a single overlooked supply chain delay had cost them $15,000 in lost inventory over a quarter, about how her model caught the pattern after just 2 weeks of data collection, about how she sat with the owners one rainy Thursday night recalculating their delivery schedules and renegotiating contracts until they could breathe again. She described the look on the owner's face when he realized he would not have to fire his nephew to stay afloat. She described how the bakery had not only survived but thrived, opening 2 more locations in the next 18 months. And as she spoke, something remarkable happened. The executives stopped seeing Lily as an outsider. They stopped seeing her as a curiosity. They started seeing her as a bridge between the cold metrics they dealt with daily and the real people whose lives hung in the balance of those numbers. When Lily finished the story, she looked around the room. No one laughed now. No one looked bored. In fact, several of them looked slightly uncomfortable, as if they were realizing how distant their decisions had become from the human cost they created. The facilitator cleared her throat. "Miss Brooks, your time was originally allotted for 5 minutes. You have been speaking for almost 30. Would you care to conclude your remarks?" Lily smiled. "Just one more thing," she said. She reached into her folder and pulled out another piece of paper. A contract. Simple. Direct. An offer for exclusive licensing rights to her model for firms willing to pilot it over the next 6 months. Terms that were fair, accessible, designed not to gouge but to build trust. She placed the contracts neatly on the table. Then she gathered her folder, slipped it under her arm, and straightened her shoulders. "Thank you for your time," she said. Then, without waiting for permission, without seeking applause, she turned and walked toward the elevator, leaving the room full of titans staring after her, each one knowing instinctively something rare had just passed through their lives, something that could not be bought or bullied or ignored. A simple woman with nothing but a worn coat, a clear idea, and a heart full of purpose. And somehow it was enough, more than enough. As Lily Brooks stepped into the elevator, she let out a slow breath she had been holding since the meeting started. The cool metal walls reflected her image back at her. A simple woman in a worn coat, clutching an empty folder. No crowd, no applause. Only the quiet satisfaction that came from standing her ground. The elevator doors closed and she descended, leaving behind a room full of the most powerful corporate leaders grappling with a question they were not accustomed to facing. What if the future had just walked out and they had barely seen it coming? Back on the 50th floor, the silence in the conference room was broken only by the low hum of the air conditioning. For a few long moments, no one moved. No one spoke. Then the man with the silver hair stood up abruptly. "Find her," he said. "I want to speak to her again." Several executives pulled out their phones at once. Emails were drafted. Calls were made. Assistants were instructed. But when they searched the lobby, Lily Brooks was already gone. Outside, the city moved around her. Anonymous. Indifferent. Lily blended into the crowd effortlessly, the way she had always done. She walked to the subway station with light, quick steps, as if a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Meanwhile, upstairs, a storm was brewing. The CFO from the logistics company spoke first. His voice carried the urgency that only fear of being left behind could bring. "If we do not move fast, someone else will." Others nodded. Deals were their world. They knew a once-in-a-decade opportunity when they saw one. And more than that, they knew how quickly opportunities could vanish. The facilitator tried to regain control. "We need to vet her background properly. We need due diligence." The woman in the black suit who had asked Lily about her spark leaned forward. "While we are vetting, our competitors are acting. I say we move now." The silver-haired man frowned. "She is a nobody. No firm. No funding. No track record. Which makes it easier to secure exclusivity," someone pointed out. A heated debate erupted. Voices overlapping. Tempers flaring. In the end, they voted. 8 out of 10 in favor of reaching out immediately. A representative was chosen. Someone who could approach Lily discreetly, make an offer she could not refuse. But finding her proved harder than expected. Lily Brooks did not have a LinkedIn profile. No glossy website. No PR agent. Only a simple listing in the Queen's business directory for a one-woman accounting service. When they called, the voicemail was full. When they emailed, there was no reply. The logistics CFO sent an intern to visit the address listed. A small storefront sandwiched between a laundromat and a closed-down diner. The windows were dusty. A handwritten sign said closed for the day. Inside, Lily sat at a small wooden desk, staring at her old laptop. Offers were already trickling into her inbox. Promises of funding, partnerships, even job offers with six-figure salaries. She read each one carefully, thoughtfully. Then she closed the laptop. She needed to think. Lily had spent too many years watching small businesses get crushed by the very forces now chasing her. She had no intention of becoming another tool for the powerful to exploit. That night, as the city glittered outside her tiny apartment window, Lily pulled out a notebook. She began to sketch out what her future could look like. Not just a deal, not just money, a way to build something that stayed true to her purpose. The next morning, she walked into a different building. Smaller, older, no gleaming glass or marble floors. Just a simple community center where local entrepreneurs gathered once a week. Lily signed up for an open presentation slot. When it was her turn, she stood before a crowd of maybe 20 people. Struggling shop owners, independent contractors, dreamers clinging to the edges of a ruthless market. She showed them the same simple diagram. She explained the same basic model. But here, the reaction was different. No skepticism, no arrogance, just hope. Afterward, 3 small business owners approached her, eager to implement her system. They did not have millions to invest. They did not wear designer suits. But they had something else. Trust. And Lily realized that was what mattered most. Meanwhile, back in the towers of Manhattan, impatience was growing. The CEOs had expected Lily to leap at their offers. They were not used to being ignored. Some grew irritated. Some grew nervous. The logistics CFO proposed sweetening the deal. More money. Better terms. The silver-haired executive suggested a more aggressive approach. If she will not come willingly, we could buy out her service. Lock up the model. Control the narrative. But before they could act, something unexpected happened. A small article appeared in a local business journal. Innovative cost model revives struggling Queens businesses. The article mentioned Lily by name, described her work in glowing terms, praised her model as a grassroots revolution in small business survival. It was not viral yet, but it was gaining attention, and more importantly, it was slipping out of their control. The woman in the black suit recognized the danger immediately. If she builds momentum at the ground level, we lose our leverage. Panic began to seep in. They had treated Lily like a resource to be acquired, an asset to be controlled. They had not realized she was a movement waiting to happen. Across town, Lily met with a lawyer recommended by one of the entrepreneurs she had helped. A quiet man with a kind smile who specialized in intellectual property law. Within a week, Lily Brooks had filed patents for her system. She had incorporated her own consulting firm. And she had secured pro bono media training from a local nonprofit that supported women in business. She was building her foundation brick by brick. Slowly, carefully, on her terms. The calls from the CEOs grew more desperate. They offered more money, partnerships, equity. One even offered a seat on a board of directors. Lily listened politely. She thanked them. She declined. Word spread through the financial circles of Manhattan. A simple woman was saying no to power. And power did not like to hear no. Rumors began to swirl. Whispers about her background. Doubts about her credentials. Skeptical articles planted in business blogs questioning her expertise. Lily weathered it all with quiet strength. She had faced worse. The bakery owner from Queens called her one evening. "You are doing the right thing, Lily," he said. "Do not let them scare you. You saved us. You will save others too." And for Lily, that was all the validation she needed. As weeks passed, Lily Brooks' reputation grew. Not because of flashy marketing. Not because of aggressive promotion. But because of word of mouth. Real results. Real people. Real change. One by one, small businesses across the city adopted her model. And one by one, they began to thrive. The movement gained a name. The Brooks Method. Simple. Effective. Human. And in the gleaming towers where the CEOs had once ruled unchallenged, they watched in stunned disbelief as the tide shifted. They had missed their chance. All because they had mistaken humility for weakness. Simplicity for ignorance. And a simple woman for no threat at all. But simplicity, Lily knew, was not the absence of power. It was the concentration of it. Pure, unbreakable, unstoppable. And now it was changing the city one small victory at a time. In the end, Lily Brooks did not conquer the boardrooms. She did something far more revolutionary. She made them irrelevant. As the months rolled on, something remarkable began to happen across New York City. It started quietly at first, almost unnoticed. A small bakery reopened as second location. A family-run bookstore that had been on the brink of closure announced record sales. A seamstress who had once struggled to make rent now took on apprentices. One by one, small businesses that had long been battered by competition and rising costs began to find their footing again. And if you asked them how it happened, they would all point to the same source. A simple woman. Lily Brooks never sought the spotlight. She did not hire a PR firm or chase awards. Her consulting firm remained small, lean, and focused. She took on only clients who were genuinely committed to rebuilding from the inside out. No giant corporations. No boardroom politics. Just real people and real problems. She trained others to use her methods. Volunteers, former clients, and even college students who believed in her vision. Slowly, a network grew. It was not about domination. It was about empowerment. At a community awards banquet one chilly November evening, Lily sat at the back of the room, sipping lukewarm coffee from a paper cup. The event was crowded with local heroes, teachers, nurses, firefighters. She had not even known she was nominated until she arrived. When the announcer called her name, she nearly dropped her cup. The citation was simple: for empowering small businesses to thrive and for reminding us all that real change begins with simple acts of courage. The audience stood and applauded as Lily made her way to the stage. She accepted the plaque with a shy smile, gave a brief thank you, and quickly returned to her seat. But that night, as she walked home under the city lights, her heart was full in a way no corporate deal could ever have achieved. Meanwhile, in the gleaming towers she had left behind, the CEOs who had once debated her fate were dealing with a very different reality. Several firms that had delayed adopting her model were now struggling against competitors who had embraced it. Market share was slipping. Profits were tightening. Some tried to pivot. Some tried to replicate what Lily had created. But they missed the most critical element. It was not just about tracking costs or streamlining operations. It was about building trust. About treating businesses not as assets, but as living, breathing communities. And that was something no spreadsheet could capture. The woman in the black suit, the one who had first recognized Lily's spark, made a quiet decision one day. She left her high-powered consulting job and opened her own firm. A different kind of firm. One that built on the principles Lily had demonstrated. She never forgot the lesson she learned that day in the glass tower. That sometimes the future does not wear designer shoes. Sometimes it wears scuffed sneakers and carries a worn leather folder. Back in Queens, Lily expanded her operations slowly. Carefully, she trained 5 other women from similar backgrounds in her methods. Accountants, former store managers, even a retired school principal. Each one carried the same philosophy forward into their neighborhoods. They called themselves the Quiet Architects. Together, they built invisible scaffolding under businesses that the world had written off as relics. Years later, an economics professor from NYU would publish a book titled The Brooks Method: The Rise of Grassroots Efficiency. It became a surprise bestseller not because it offered magic formulas, but because it reminded readers of something essential. That complexity is not always strength. That sometimes, the simplest ideas, when rooted in real experience and real care, can transform entire ecosystems. Lily never read the book. She was too busy living the next chapter of her story. One crisp spring afternoon, she found herself back in Manhattan. Not in a tower or a conference room, but at a small pop-up fair for local entrepreneurs. Booths lined the plaza. Handmade signs fluttered in the breeze. At one booth, a young woman with bright eyes was explaining a streamlined inventory system to a curious customer. Lily recognized the structure immediately. One of her trainees had been here. She smiled quietly and moved on. Further down, an elderly man was teaching a teenager how to balance a simple ledger. At another stand, a mother with 2 children proudly displayed a wall chart tracking her cafe's new cost savings. Everywhere Lily looked, she saw signs of growth, resilience, hope. And none of it bore her name. That was how she wanted it. She paused near a bench, watching the scene unfold. A little boy chased pigeons near the fountain. A teenager practiced a dance routine by a lamp post. A dog barked happily as it tugged its leash toward a food truck. Life. Messy. Beautiful. Uncontrollable. And yet, within that chaos, small patterns of care and persistence wove themselves into something stronger than steel. Lily sat on the bench and pulled out her notebook. The same battered one she had used to sketch out her ideas when no one believed in them. She opened to a blank page. She wrote a single sentence. Simplicity is not the absence of power. It is the beginning of it. She smiled and tucked the notebook away. As she rose to leave, she felt a tap on her shoulder. It was the young woman from the booth, the one explaining inventory systems. "Excuse me, are you Lily Brooks?" Lily turned. "I am." The young woman flushed with excitement. "I just wanted to say thank you. I learned from someone you trained. I opened my first store last month. It is small, but we are making it work." Lily offered a warm smile. "You are the one making it work. Never forget that." The young woman nodded vigorously, then hesitated. "Would you mind if we took a photo together? It would mean a lot." Lily chuckled softly. "Of course." They posed by the fountain. The teenager with the dance routine offered to take the picture. As the shutter clicked, Lily found herself laughing, a real, open laugh that felt like sunlight breaking through winter clouds. Later that night, as she sat at her kitchen table, Lily reflected on the journey. There had been no grand announcements, no viral fame, no ticker-tape parades, just steady work, steady belief, steady building. And that was enough. It had always been enough. Somewhere out there, deals were still being made in glass towers. Fortunes still rose and fell on the stock exchange. Titans still roared and clashed. But in the spaces between those noisy battles, Lily Brooks and those like her were planting seeds. Quietly, patiently, relentlessly. And when history looked back, it might not remember the names on the skyscrapers. It might not record the biggest mergers or the flashiest IPOs. But it would remember something deeper. That in a city that often celebrated the loudest voices and the flashiest victories, one simple woman had shown that true power is built quietly, carefully, with hands steady enough to hold a vision through storms and setbacks alike. The next morning, Lily opened her consulting office at the usual time. She brewed a pot of coffee, answered emails, reviewed client reports. Outside, the city roared and rumbled. Inside, she smiled to herself and got back to work. Because some revolutions are not fought with armies. Some are built one careful act at a time. And some of the most powerful stories are lived quietly by those the world almost forgot to notice. Simple women, unbreakable spirits, endless beginnings.